In the inbox late night, glowing screens see the light. Do-do-do, email, everything feels alright.
Today we are going to discuss the 5 fundamental forces of email and retention. Click-through rate is not even on my list here, right? This is not just the everyday stuff that we discuss. These are the underlying tailwinds that push you forward. If you get these things right, you have wind in your sails, and all those things like click-through rates just do better. So this is one of the biggest differences. Obviously, it's the elephant in the room. Email retention versus ads. What's the core difference? It's the world's best email and retention podcast, and I'm your host, Jordan Gordon. We are a member of the DTC network of podcasts and the philosophical home of the Pilot House email and customer retention team. Today, we are going to discuss the 5 fundamental forces of email and retention. It might be a long one. Just look at my notes. Before we jump into that and talk more about what it is, let's do a little bit of news and kind of housekeeping. So we've had a back and forth and agreed to have Zach Solomon, the director of e-commerce of Filson, on the podcast. He really liked the expose we did on Filson emails. If you want to review that, please do. It's the world's best email and retention podcast, episode 5. And if you do, I'd recommend you watch it on YouTube or Spotify because it's got a lot of visuals. We discuss, their great program from both a performance and brand perspective. If you've not yet subscribed to the world's best email and retention podcast, please do, so you'll be notified when we have Zach on. Okay, so the 5 fundamental forces of email. Click-through rate is not even on my list here, right? This is not just the everyday stuff that we discuss. These are the underlying tailwinds that push you forward. If you get these things right, you have wind in your sails, and all those things like click-through rates just do better, right? We'll start by discussing the horizontal, time, and then we'll move to the vertical. How deep did someone get into your funnel? We'll talk about awareness. And awareness represents itself both in time, how long since they've engaged, and in the vertical, how deep they get into your kind of funnel. And we'll finish off with 2 different discussions of scale. Scale from a cost perspective and from a revenue perspective. I would say this is like less of a foundations chat where we're just talking about how to get your email program set up. This is more geared for the seasoned email marketer who wants an extra perspective on how to run email and retention, or for a kind of new retention manager who really wants to set things up right the first time. But probably you should have run an email program before you'll get much out of this. If you are someone in our audience who is rather new to email, doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to it and start trying to integrate it into some of your work. So first, the horizontal, time, right? Here's a fundamental force, right? Messages compound. And when I say that, I want you to actually think about compound interest, right? Einstein says compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. So let's talk about a couple things here. First, just really high level, if you want to build a relationship, you had to add value and respect people's time. I've said it once, I've said it many times. To build a relationship, you must add value and respect people's time, both in email and in life. Now, let's imagine for a second that you have a business that sells rags for car detailing, a specialized kind of rag that holds the chemicals just right? It's actually a client of ours. Now, okay, you can send out emails that are like, here's some great rags, here's 20% off. Your audience is never really going to understand necessarily that you're not just, a drop shipper shipping out of Vietnam or China or something like that, right? They're never really going to understand that you're really car people. You could just be selling this stuff. You could be buying it on Amazon and reselling it. So, okay, let's say you go to a couple car shows a year, start taking some pictures of classic cars, talk to the car guy, hey, can I film you and talk about your car on my thing? He'll say, hell yeah, of course. He loves his car. He wants the world to know about his car. Build some content. Just get some content, right? Okay, let's say you put out an email that was like, hey, check out this classic car. That will do nothing. When we think about compound interest, the value of a message in the near term is almost nothing. Almost nothing, right? But over time, let's say you run 25 of those in a year. You shoot 25 cars in the 2 car shows a year you go to, have some, statements by the owners, maybe a bit of video, whatever it is, and you run 25 of those. So, rule of thumb, engage with 1 in every 5 messages. Super engaged, maybe 1 in every 3. Like if they just put something in their cart, they'll engage with 1 every 3 messages. Engaged, then 1 every 5. Unengaged, 1 every 10. So you're sending this thing out. If you send 25 in a year, you should think that your average just person on your list is going to interact with 3 of those, maybe 4. Well, 3 or 4 impressions of saying the same thing over and over again is going to be enough to get through to your audience. Oh yeah, these are car people. They're like into cars. We can prove it. Here they are talking to the owner of this 67 Chevy or whatever it is, right? So that's the compounding effect. The value of a message in the near term is almost nothing. The value of a consistent message over time builds a place in their mind for you. So that was a campaign example. Let's take an automation example, right, of this exact same concept. Let's say you've got part of your business is B2B. You've got a B2C business, but you got this B2B part. Okay, let's say you put in welcome email 2. Hey, check out our B2B whatever. The value of that is almost nothing, right? Because not everyone's going to interact with it. And even if they did interact with it, they saw it once, it's kind of in one ear out the other or whatever. But let's say you make a large kind of pre-footer, we'll call it. So on your template, you've got your primary section, which is hero headline, just get the message across with an image to help convey that message. And then below that, you got the shoppability, merchandising, maybe, whatever's going on, right? And below that, standard, you've got this, check out our warehouse section or whatever, right? Check out our warehouse team. Okay, that's going to be powerful because you're putting that in every message, right? So even if someone did interact the first time, they're not necessarily going to understand. They might just be doom scrolling, right? It doesn't register. Okay, but they see that message many times. It's going to get through. Oh yeah. Hey, you know what? Maybe I should actually buy a whole bunch of these and get that, that deal. Maybe rather than just the B2B portion, this could be anything, right? It could be you refer a friend. If you just say, hey, refer a friend in one email, it's going to do nothing, of 0 value. You build that in, and every single message in that same spot says, give 10, get 10, or whatever it is. That's going to have a compounding effect. And one more little point on this. The nature of email is, of course, that you are speaking to the same audience every time. With ads, new week, new audience. You can have at your very top layer, you can say nobody who's been served an ad in the last 365 on Meta or Instagram. And basically every single time you know that you've pretty much got net new audience, right? Only if it's like some device stuff. And even then you're signed in. So that doesn't even make any sense either, right? So you can always have net new audience. Whereas with email, it's always the same audience. And the important point of this is if you send out a bad message, dumb or whatever, or offensive, I don't know, whatever, you're speaking to that same person next week. That buyer you've offended with your nasty content is still offended next week. So keep in mind, you're speaking to the same audience. This is one of the biggest differences. Obviously, it's the elephant in the room. Email retention versus ads. What's the core difference? Email, you're speaking to the same people every time. Ads, you're speaking to someone new every week. That is the core difference. And it changes the entire messaging makeup because you wouldn't run a classic cars thing at the top of a funnel. You'd be like, hey, these rags are great at holding this chemical to get in this edge or something, right? Okay, that was the horizontal. We're going to keep rolling right along and discuss the vertical. So Email is a landing page for your site. Every email is just a landing page for your website. What is email? It's HTML. What is a website? It's HTML. Email is HTML that loads. It's a web page for your site that loads in someone's SMTP client, like Gmail, whereas the rest of your site loads in an HTTP client, like Chrome or Safari. So there are some platform differences. You can't run all your pixels on the HTML web page in your SMTP client. You can run all those pixels on the HTML site in your HTTP client. So obviously we want to move people from the email to the website, but even when you're running a landing page, you want people to move from that landing page onto your product detail pages. So you can largely just treat your email as a landing page. Okay, so first question, would you send traffic to a crappy landing page? No. Would you build a landing page, right? And send people to it, put all that time into it, and have it garbage? You would not. And also, we will discuss automation later, but just so I don't forget, that's obviously why you'd want to do more automation. When you build a landing page, do you want that landing page to you just throw it away after one use? Never. You'd always want to use the landing page more than once. So you always want to focus your email program on automations so that you can drive traffic to that landing page more than once. A campaign is just a one-time use landing page. So how do you make an email work better? How do you optimize an email? Well, easy. Just go read the many pages on how to optimize a landing page. Same thing. It's a landing page that has a persistent audience. That does change things, right? So we just discussed the horizontal. You're talking to the same people over time. Direct response copy on a landing page assumes, hey, someone hits this page, this is my only shot. And they're probably fresh. I've got to spell it out from the top, really big text. Because you're speaking to the same people over time, you can use less text than in a direct response copy landing page because you know you're going to get future visits. They've put their hand up. You're sending out good content, right? You can see it in the numbers. They like being in my program. So I can be light with this message. I can use a few sentences to really drive home this kind of core message that I'm building for them and build on that over time. So this is the reason that emails tend to be less copy intensive than a direct response landing page. Although, if you check out B2B type emails, especially for software as a service, if you get on the SEMrush email list, they're going to send you this huge block of text because they know they're speaking to prospects. It's a complex service. So obviously there are cases, and in consumer packaged goods, let's say you were a specialty toothbrush, you might have more copy to explain the complex concepts involved in that good. Whereas if you're selling pants and shoes, everybody knows the value of pants. Everybody knows how pants work. So you don't need as much copy. But point being, how do you optimize an email? Well, think about the subject line as the AdSense, long tail keyword ad copy. The email is the landing page. Optimize the subject line, which is the ad copy. Optimize the headline. Pick the right first product for them to see, and make it not ugly. Really, really high level. Subject, headline, product, not ugly. Obviously, having the right hero shot is important. That fits under not ugly. In my experience, for email, going in and changing the copy in the CTA isn't, if you've got just good CTA copy, you're not going to get that much lift out of it. Fixing the subject line and the headline, I think you're going to get the most lift because the subject line, you explain the value in the email, and the header, subhead kind of pair, you are going to reinforce that value and start to explain what's required to get that value. Every landing page is, where am I? What do you want me to do? What's in it for me? The where am I of the email is taken care of when you think about it as a landing page, right? So give it a top menu that matches the site top menu. Maybe not the whole top menu, but the most important points. Same logo, same kind of area, right? Give it the same look and feel of the website. You hit the website, you hit the email and think, oh, I'm on the website, right? Like, I know who this is. I totally recognize where I am. So we take care of where am I with the email just by making it look like the website, right? But then what's in it for me and what do you want me to do? The what's in it for me is in the subject line and the headline. The what do you want me to do? We expand in the headline and maybe in a subhead. 50% off blue widgets this week only. Shop now. There you go, right? In fact, when you give an offer and you say like end soon, this much time, the what do you want me to do is inherent. It's purchase. But sometimes like you can always assume that what do you want me to do is built in. It's buy it. But if it's not buy it, you want to spell out that what do you want me to do very clearly. Fill out this form, right? Go to this location, etc. Yeah, and final point. Because we know that we do need to get them onto the site proper so that all of our retargeting pixels, our tracking pixels for Klaviyo, Meta, all this stuff, because we need them to be on the website proper for all those to fire, make sure when you explain the value, when you give value in an email, make sure that, at least half of that value is gained on the site. Learn more, right? Get the list, whatever it is, that's always on the site. And so that kind of is a constraint on your landing page. That's interesting. So we've got the horizontal. Time. Speaking to these people over time. How we think about that. We got the vertical. How do we get them into the funnel? It's a landing page. It's a shoppable landing page, right? We have dynamic product blocks. Recommended for you. Trending now. This is what's hot. Oh, social proof, right? Oh, that's hot right now. It must be what's going to be looking really good this fall. I'm going to click on it. Oh, wow, look, we just triggered browse abandon, right? So shoppable landing pages. That's the vertical, because when it's shoppable and we've got a product, it progresses someone past the category page and into the product detail page. It skips a click. Now, category pages do rock, and sending someone to a category page performs well. The only time you'd skip that category page is if you know that you're showing them products that they're going to like better than the category page, because category page increases the chance that someone sees something they want. But if you send 4 or 6 recommendations and we have click information for the user, we know they got into the category, we know we can build proper recommendations for them. You've got a catalog that makes sense for recommendations. If you've got 2 products, obviously you don't need to send recommendations. You also probably wouldn't send someone to a category page if you got 2 products. But when we send them real value from machine learning driven product lists, they will progress to the PDP and it will outperform a category page. Next one, we're going to talk about awareness. So this one is, we're going to start getting a little bit more nebulous here, okay? Meet engagement with activity and specificity. Wow, what is that? It's like talking like Yoda, right? Meet engagement with activity and specificity. The more engaged someone is, the more evidence you have that they're engaged, which would generally be recency of them doing something, frequency, how many times they've done something, or monetary, have they ever purchased, right? RFM, super classic email stuff. If you don't know what RFM is, Google it. So when we know someone is engaged, we go to the more specific and we increase activity. Increase activity, this is simple. Your most engaged people can do up to 3 messages a week. And then the next engaged, 2 messages a week. The next engaged, 1 message a week. Finally, you're at 1 message, the least engaged people, a message a month, right? I mean, I've got someone I work with who they're least engaged. They message once every 6 weeks, right? But those are super unengaged people. And what we're looking for is just an open, just to get them into an engaged list. Okay, so that's the activity part. More activity. I have evidence you're engaged, more activity. What about specificity? So there's a whole big list, right? We want to be more indirect response, more like Don Draper, more like Mad Men, for people who are less engaged. And these would be people who haven't engaged in a long time or who didn't get as far down into the funnel, right? So awareness affects both the horizontal and the vertical. If you didn't get very far down in the funnel, we focus on indirect response copy and indirect response concepts. If you have not engaged in a long time, we focus on this indirect response. We want to just get very high level. And we've talked about it before. The very high level is what world is this brand in? And if I was in that world, would I be secure and wanted, right? And then as we get more specific, it becomes what are the features and benefits? And then finally, the most specific, what are the differentiators? How am I different from my competitors, right? Think about how we structure emails. This concept fits into every single asset. How do we structure emails? If someone is unengaged, we start with the broadest concept. It's going to be a hero shot with on-model lifestyle shots, and then it progresses down, and then we'll get the most specific last and put like a recommendations block or something like that. Whereas if it's someone who's engaged, we flip that on its head, and we would start with here's the product you just looked at. You can't get more specific than that. And then we're going to move down to, okay, here's some other products that you might like. And then we're going to move down to our manufacturing process, the quality of our components. And finally, in the very end, if nothing caught them, we're going to go as broad as possible and be like, here's who we are. Click through and check out this blog post, right? Which is just this high level concept, right? Not specific at all. So obviously the structure of the message is built around this level of awareness. How often, recent, did they engage? Have they spent? How far down the funnel did they get? Brand marketing, prospect marketing, testimonials. Talk about the brand, talk about the product, talk about the testimonials. Testimonials would be way down the funnel when you get to cart abandon, checkout abandon. I mean, you can have them further up the funnel. But the thing is, if someone got on the site and they bounced, they didn't even get in the catalog, you can put some testimonials in there. But I think you're better served talking about why they're the right brand for them, right? And when they start really thinking about, when they start clicking on products, putting stuff in their cart, okay, now we want to start talking about about other customers' experience because they're getting more serious, right? Yeah, the less engaged someone is, whether it's time, it's been a long time since they've engaged, or whether they didn't get very far down the funnel, we talk about our hero product, which would be our number one seller, or our hero category, right? Our main category, our essentials. And then as people progress down, we start talking about the second category, right? We start marketing the second category, even if they haven't bought before, even if they're non-buyers, because they're getting into it. And we can start saying, hey, this category works with this category. These two together are better than the sum of their parts, right? So we start having that conversation when we know they've done enough clicking to get down the funnel, or when we know they're clicking often enough, they've engaged more than once. They've definitely seen this main category. We'll start talking about the secondary category or this most often second product purchased or something like that. We get way back unengaged, way back reactivation, right? We're going back to talking about that main category because that main category has infused in it who you are as a brand. So it tells that hero product tells your brand story, even if they've purchased it before. It's been so long. I mean, put some recommendation blocks in there, right? Of course, show them a product they're likely to buy. That's fine, right? Show them bestsellers. Bestsellers are great for people who are unengaged. But the point is, expose them to discussions of your main product line, main category, because that has your story embedded in it. Yeah, that's awareness. Okay, we got a couple more here. What an episode, right? Look at all this. It took me days. I actually recorded it already, and I'm re-recording it. So let's talk about scale. We've got the horizontal, we got the vertical, we got how awareness is embedded in the horizontal and the vertical. These are the tides of email and retention. These are these forces that kind of move things around. If you get these right, people just progress through your system, right? This is what you want to master, right? If you want to be a mega killer email and retention person. So talk about scale when it comes to revenue. We'll start with the revenue portion, then we'll move to the cost portion last. Revenue portion. So meet scale with automation. right? This should be obvious, but the point is you want to have this list of things and you want to think about these as you're working on every asset. Go through your list, think about these things because there's different places where this appears, right? Let's start with the lowest scale, okay? Your top 5 buyers a year. That's 5 people. No scale whatsoever, right? What should you do with them? At the end of the year, write them a handwritten or hand-typed thank you note in email and make it specific to them. Hey, you bought this last year. I see you bought this year. This year. It looks like you're really progressing, or it looks like, your customers are going to be happy if it's wholesale or whatever, right? It's specific to them. And it's 5. How long is it going to take? It's not going to take long, right? That's no scale whatsoever. But those are the 5 most important relationships, in your customer list. You don't meet that with automation, but okay, let's scale up. Let's say you've got a huge list. You want to drive more revenue with a huge list? You can't just keep sending more campaigns because Gmail and Yahoo are scrutinizing now. Look at our recent episodes. How are you going to scale up your revenue when you've already got like this huge list that you're having trouble stuffing more through the inbox providers without some of that audience becoming unreachable? Well, obviously automations, right? Automations have a, 5x the click-through rate because you're sending to engaged people. So Gmail loves those. Like, oh, look at the click-through rate on this. I'm going to send these right through. Also, look at the size of this. I'm not concerned about sending through 1,000 messages sent. I'm a little concerned about sending through 1 million. I think I'm going to look and make sure that everybody's engaging. I'm going to do a little test send, a small amount, do an analysis, make a statistical decision on whether or not this is a good message, and then go back and send the rest through. That's what Google's doing to your 1 million email message. But are they doing that to your 1,000? Not really, right? They're just pushing it through. So you use the automated messages that obviously focus on people who've shown intent, and you scale up your revenue per email sent, right? Your headline revenue per email sent will go up, and you'll send hardly any more messages. So you are scaling your program through automations. Okay, let's say you've got a lot of SKUs. Okay, so you've got 1 SKU, 2 SKUs. What are you doing? You're actually going to just write about those SKUs, right? Hard-coded pictures in your emails of those SKUs on model shots, lifestyle shots. Okay, you've got a big catalog. Well, go back and look at DTC podcast episode 311 where we talk about continuation. Go back and understand how we use automation to improve discovery, right? When we do recommendations, when we do trending, bestsellers, new to site, we are improving and speeding product discovery and progressing people down the funnel. So you can't do that manually if you've got a big catalog. You're going to let the machine do it, right? You're going to have an exciting life. You're going to put your feet up on the desk. You're going to let the machine do it, right? So as you look at your asset and you think, look, does this portion of the asset, like the product, have enough scale that I can introduce automation? When you introduce that automation, you improve the lifespan of the asset because as your catalog changes, you don't have to go in and change the asset, right? Just also, like the evergreen aspect of an asset is related to scale. Can I use the same asset pre-purchase, post-purchase? Can I send it to someone more than once? If you've got dynamic products and you're loading in new recommendations after a certain amount of time has passed, yeah, you can send them the same asset, right? So evergreen is a portion of scale. And so just the number of automated emails you have is an aspect of this. Okay, less emails means I can push more addresses through every single individual email, which means I scale, right? So I'm scaling up through automation. Okay, final point. The cost portion of scale. So we just did the revenue portion. We're using automation, increasing revenue per email sent. Basically, right, you want to increase your revenue per email sent. It's a baseline metric. Klaviyo, by the way, doesn't give that metric. You got to do it yourself. Look, all my stuff is in spreadsheets. I don't go on any Klaviyo pages and look at their little graphs. I mean, this is if you're an entrepreneur, of course, please do. But like if you're getting into the 5 foundational forces of email, you better be in spreadsheets. You better not be spending your time on Klaviyo's little graphs. So you're going to get revenue per email sent by calculating it in a spreadsheet, of course. Okay, so scale email buyer ROI to ads ROI. And by scale, we actually mean obviously ROI going down. You would not want email buyer ROI to go below ads ROI. So there's 2 parts to this, the ROI part and the buyer part. So first, just how to calculate the ROI, right? We've got platform, got Google Analytics 4. You're going to give your platform attribution for email the same attribution as your ads attribution. Just go poke around and figure out how to do it on the pages, on the help pages. And then when you've got apples to apples revenue, you just take your email cost and your ads cost. You calculate email ROI, or retention ROI, and you calculate ads ROI. So, like obviously baseline, every business needs new customers. So, if that ROI for Klaviyo basically is less than your ads ROI, you're doing something wrong. Take that money and spend it on ads. Obviously, like that's obvious. You would always, all things being equal, you would take a new customer over a repeat customer because that new customer has the potential to become a repeat customer. Okay, but this aspect of the buyer ROI. So, of course, you've been listening to the World's Best Email and Retention podcast, and you are a studious email and retention professional. So you have split all of your revenue up by buyer and prospect. You do it it's pretty easy to do inside the platform. You do it inside Google Analytics 4 as well. So now we introduce this new thing, GA4, and you go and insert into the hyperlinks, into the links of the email, a binary for whether someone's a prospect or a buyer, and you go to GA4, and GA4 has all your email revenue or all your Klaviyo revenue split up by buyer and prospect. Maybe you could use the source, you could use UTM item, lots of different ways you can do it. So in GA4, you're like, oh, here is our buyer, here's our prospect revenue. So you got the split on both platform and GA. And for Google Analytics 4, by the way, to get the right attribution, what I recommend is user acquisition is first touch, traffic acquisition is last touch. Actually take the average of the two, and that's even attribution. Even attribution got downgraded a little bit in certain parts of GA4. So, and I'm a simple guy. I got a BCom, I like 2x2 charts. I just go in, put those two in a spreadsheet, average them. That average is even attribution. So now you've got your even attribution, email, ads on GA. You've got your apples to apples platform, ads, email. You got your costs, apply the same cost to both, get the ROIs for both, 2 different views. And then you've got buyer prospect for both, and you apply a weighted average to the buyer ROI, to the email ROI by share of buyer. So easiest example, if you've got ROI 10 and 50% of your revenue is buyer ROI, your buyer ROI is 5, right? So some stuff in the weeds. First of all, you should have a share of revenue in Klaviyo for buyers well more than 50%. We just saw in our Q4, it was like 80 to 90% of the revenue in Klaviyo platform was like from buyers, right? So in your peak seasons, basically Klaviyo is buyer marketing. And even off of peak seasons, like it should be 2/3. If it's not 2/3, you're doing something wrong, right? So what's more realistic is you had ROI 10 and you end up with buyer ROI 6 or 7. That's what's more realistic in the weeds. Also, if you go and talk to your chief financial officer about this, first of all, if you go talk to your CFO about this, God help you, right? Second of all, technically, what you should be doing is taking the prospect ROI and giving that revenue and cost to the other channel. So what am I talking about here? Okay, the underlying idea here is that acquisitions, ads, they drive new customers. They should get credit for new customers. Retention should not get credit for new customers. So you take the revenue and the weighted average cost and apply that and say this is retention. You take the customers and cost for acquisitions. You give credit to the ads team. Otherwise, you've got this portion of cost for email retention that's floating and it's not matching any revenue anywhere. So watch out for your CFO if you bring this to your CFO, right? But to just dumb this down, obviously, to close this off, you want your buyer ROI to approach but not go below the ads ROI. And then you know that you're being truly additive, right? Because when you reactivate a buyer from a long time ago, there's no incurred ad cost. It drives up your domain revenue without driving up your ad cost, improves your cost efficiency, and allows the ads team to invest more money in the top of the funnel. Okay, so what does this do? Once you have this in place, what does this do? Well, first of all, it's going to make you build a program where you drive a second purchase. Your whole email program will be focused on driving a second purchase because you know that improves your buyer ROI and allows you to justify more spend into your program, whether it's to your CFO or whether you're an entrepreneur and you just say, hey, this is working, I'm going to put more into this, right? So this forces your hand to make a program that drives second purchases. And we just discussed driving second purchases at low cost. It improves the whole business. It creates a virtuous cycle where it allows you to invest more in new customers. Second, it pushes you to build the largest buyer list you possibly can. So here's our research. I've said it before. There are 10 times more repeat buyers every month who are receiving email than who are not. And basically when someone stops receiving email, they basically stop purchasing. The causality, who knows? I mean, maybe if they unsubscribed, they just don't want it anymore. If they fell off the engagement map, you were no longer, that horizontal we discussed is broken. You're no longer serving impressions to them. You're no longer building a place in their mind for you, and they just forget about you, right? So now, because you want to have the largest buyer list possible, so you can have the best buyer ROI, so you can invest more in your channel, which then improves the efficiency of other channels by allowing them to invest more, right? As we just discussed. Suddenly you say, hey, we got to hold on to these buyer addresses. We got to really speak carefully to them. We got to keep them on the list for 2 or 3 years. Hey, why don't we do that great car idea that we started with, the very beginning idea? See how these things are all intertwined. Let's run that. Keep these buyers on the list. Improve our buyer ROI. Okay, that's going to be like a 45 minute talk. That was a lot. The 5 fundamental forces of email and retention. An email is a landing page. Messages compound over time. Meet engagement with activity and specificity. Meet scale with automation. And scale buyer ROI to and not beyond ads ROI. Think about those things as you're making your next big flow, your next big quarterly plan. Think about those fundamental forces, because if you get those fundamental forces right, it's going to be wind in your sails, and you can make mistakes. You can make mistakes in the execution, and it's okay because everything's working in harmony because you got these 5 fundamental forces all moving together. And until I see you again, have fun spamming.
In the inbox late night, glowing screen, see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
Hey entrepreneurs and spammers, remember, you can't scale without email, and the cheapest customer to acquire is the customer you already have. So please subscribe to the world's best email and retention podcast and learn how to make low-cost revenue a big part of your digital ecosystem.